eighth page of the Maimer, where Oisvav page base. We were speaking about the different levels of the neshama. There's nefesh, ruach, neshama. We explained that the idea of neshama is in the level of moichin, intellect, bina, panim asbiros. We explained the idea of ruach has to do with midas, the lev, whether it's the midas that are natural midas or the midas that are created by moichin, by intellect. Now we're going to talk about the level of nefesh. It says Oizvav, line 4. Inyan nefesh ubakav. The idea of the nefesh is in the liver. So it's moyach leiv kavod. There's a Rosh Tevis of Chazal. They are Rosh Tevis of Melech. If the brain rules over the heart rules over the kavod, which means the action, so then the person's a king. But if it's the other way around, there's a word. If it's the heart, then it tells the brain what to think, and then it's the action. So then he's a lemech. He's like a nebuch. But the main point is that kavod is associated in the expressions of Chazal with action. This idea of action, that is the main thing. The main thing is not so much brain, not so much heart. I'm sorry. That's the main thing of kavod is action. I'm sorry. Kavod's main thing is action. Though there's additional things, just like we explained previously concerning the neshama v'ruach, that since everything is cold from the all three, so neshama has the neshama shem neshama, ruach shem neshama, and nefesh shem neshama. So too the nefesh has in it all three. So therefore it has not just ma'isa, but it has also the levels of ruach and neshama, moichin and midas. But the main thing is the idea of action. What does that mean practically? So it says in line 7, snake boy from the sur to act in a way of turning away from bad and doing good. To such a degree, he doesn't just choose to do so, but he feels like he cannot do any other way. The only option he sees for himself is to fulfill the 248 mitzvah and to turn away and not be involved at all in the 365 negative commandments, according to the will of the Creator. Now the Rebbe says it doesn't just mean action that's completely dry. It also includes in it love and awe of Hashem. Let's explain that love is the root for all the 248 mitzvahs. Rebbe says, and without love, there is no true fulfillment of the 248 mitzvahs. Who is truly fulfilling a mitzvah? Someone that loves Hashem, and someone who desires to cleave to Hashem truly. So to concerning all, that's the root for the 365 negative commandments that you need to have, or to really be fulfilling the mitzvahs. So, therefore, included in kavod, included in nefesh, is also the love and awe that's necessary for the mitzvahs. In addition to the fact that actually performing a mitzvah without beautifying the mitzvah, without a way of having it a kiyum and vitality to it, which is all things that love and awe of Hashem adds. Love and awe of Hashem adds that a person wants to be mahader in the mitzvah, adds that it's a lasting type of fulfillment, it's with vitality and energy. So Yachal is if he's not going to have all these components of the mitzvah, of Hiddur and so on, so you could technically perform the mitzvah without Ava V'Yira. but that doesn't mean that the Ava V'yira is something separate from the mitzvah, because when the fulfillment of the mitzvah is out of love and awe, the primary thing is not the love and awe on its own, because love and awe on its own, that's not nefesh. That's the level of ruach, that's the level of heart. But rather here, when he's fulfilling a mitzvah out of love and awe, so it's part of the mitzvah, rather, as a result of the love and awe that he has for Hashem, Nasa Kima mitzvah be'emes becomes fulfillment of the mitzvah in the true and real fashion. So in other words, the love and awe that we're talking about over here is not love and awe of Hashem in the back. That's the level of ruach. Here we're talking about he wants to do the mitzvah, the action of the mitzvah in the most best and perfect way. To do so, he needs love and awe. So the love and awe is not a separate thing. It's part of the level of nefesh, part of the level of action. Now, after enumerating the last few oisias about what's the neshama, what's the ruach, what's the nefesh, now he's going to explain the purpose and how that serves the person's avoid. Zion, line 23. All these matters, neshama shabbamayach, the neshama that's in the brain, ruach shabbalev, the ruach that's in the heart, the nefesh shabbakavod, in the level of nefesh that's in the liver, yechaylo machrachas neshama limsarais malakut. The neshama is able to and must devote it to the Eibush. The godliness, that is its mission of the neshama in the world. In a way of a descent for the sake of an ascent. Behind this means though the neshama went down there below, is distant from godliness, still in all. Top of page it still has the capability to grasp and to comprehend matters of godliness in such a way that from the grasp, from the level of neshama that's in the brain, it can come down into the ruach that's in the heart, until in action, the level of the kavod, the level of the nefesh. Not only is the capability of the neshama to comprehend things that are higher than its level of bina, than the bina of the neshama itself, the neshama has the capability to comprehend things that are even higher than the sphera of bina in Atzilus. How comes? He said, for this reason, the command that we have a mitzvah to have an understanding and a comprehension in godliness. Like the Torah says, you should know the God of your father. So it's not just on the type of understanding and comprehension that reaches only to Sfiras Abina. This Da'alekei Avicha reaches much higher than that. And in matters that are connected with the level of Bina. But rather has to be the study to such a degree of grasp and comprehension, even the level of Chachma, which is higher than Bina, the Keser, the level of Keser, Adla till higher and higher, even than all these levels. The reason for this is both from the perspective and the root of the neshama and Hashem's very essence. So because the neshama is rooted in Hashem's essence, therefore it's able to reach and understand and comprehend things that are reaching all the way to Hashem's essence. And also from a different perspective, for what Hashem descended and brought down here. Since because the Eibishter's essence constricted himself to understand the level of Binim, Torah through Torah. And also the Yardakam Madregis that traveled, descended many levels, until it was enclosed in different physical combinations of letters with ink on parchment, like the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, so that every neshama should be able to reach it. So since Hashem specially lowered himself to become understood in Bina. And how does he become understood in Bina? Through the level of Torah, and Torah comes down to the lowest most level. Therefore, for this reason, therefore, through the work of the neshama, it's able to reach Hashem's very essence. In addition to this, these three matters. Whether it's the neshama that's in the brain, whether it's the level, the ruach that's in the heart, whether we're talking about the soul that's in the liver, Shurim Mevarim Pratim is connected with specific limbs and organs. And they become enclosed in them, like we're speaking about, the brain, the heart, and so on. But add to such a degree are these soul powers enclosed in the body, and the power of the one who does wonders, that the Farshim explained that this idea of doing wonders is referring to the wonder that we say in Daven. It's referring to the union of the soul and the body. So therefore, they become joined imayim with the body. The mitzias achas, the one mitzias with the different limbs of the body, they become entirely one being. The fact that the different parts of the person's neshama becomes entirely joined with the different limbs and organs to such a degree that's now considered one thing, just like we call a person an Adam. The Adam is not the neshama himself, and the Adam is not the body itself. When you have both together, you have the neshama joined with the body, that's an Adam. The same thing that I was extending this when you have the particular soul powers in their particular organs and limbs, so then they're completely joined. So he says in line 22, so then they are actually one entity. That's the idea of being an inner and an internalized and permeating soul power. Only an inner soul power can come in such a way that it's enclosed and joined in one. Since this is an inner soul power, a power that permeates and becomes internalized, Chakasher and Tfisa that's connected with grasping and comprehension, medida, measured and bounded, and moving so it's understood. A person by his service according to reason and knowledge, yeshle shlita al zeh, he has control over the top of page Yudal. And in these things is this entire avodah, that it's incumbent upon him the obligation to affect that his neshama, his ruach, and his nefesh should be bound up with godliness. To use all their matters for godliness, and to be completely removed and out of the question of any matters that are not godliness. Any questions before we go on? Okay, let's continue. Line 5, page Yudal. So after speaking about nefesh, ruach, and neshama and their locations and how one is obligated to use them and so on, so now he's going to speak about Chai Yechid. There's also the levels of Chai Yechid Shebenefesh. In the crime Makipim Shebenefesh, they're called the transcendent level, the encompassing levels of the nefesh. Hey, Einam Kshurim and Eber Prati, they're not connected with a specific limb or organ. But eventually slopshus in the way that they're enclosed in that specific limb and organ. Like, for example, intellect is enclosed, or neshama is enclosed in the physical brain. It's not that way when we're dealing with Chai Yechida. And how much more so, not in such a way they become completely joined, like we said about the nefesh, ruach, neshama, that since they're involved with individual limbs and organs, they become completely joined with them. The idea behind this is it's explained before in Ois Dalet concerning Chachma. Chachma, as opposed to Bina, is called a shining face. not an illuminating, not a explaining face. Because explanation, hasbara, has to do with things outside, and that needs a keli. Chachma is not about keli. Yoisa erbolvad beli keli, since chachma is just a light and a revelation alone, without being yet contracted into a keli, limited and defined by a keli. Beli kli, without a vessel. This means, he says in the brackets, even though chachma on its own also has to have and has to a certain degree the idea of kli. That's the way kli is in the world of chachma. In other words, in comparison to chachma, it's considered kli, but it's not like kalim in other cases that are, let's say, outside of it. In comparison to bina, it is something that's only a level of a light that's not connected with a vessel. Just like it's above, that the level of chachma is just a level of panim meiris and not panim asbiris. It's not the idea of kli. It's only about oir. So too, it's down here below. The level of chachma is not connected with an individual in a specific limb, which we're soon going to explain has to do with chaya, because having to do with a specific limb has to do with having a keli. Chachma has nothing to do with a keli, therefore it's not connected with a specific limb. What was explained, that the resting place, the residence of the level of the intellect is in the brain. So chachma is part of the intellect, it's part of the moichin. So if it's part of the intellect, so how can you tell me that doesn't have an Eivir Prati? The Eivir Prati is in the brain. So it says, this is primarily when we say that the moichin, that the intellect resides in the moyach, it resides in the brain, that's concerning bina. Masha'enken ha-chachma, makiv, as opposed to chachma, is in a way that's transcendent and encompassing. Allah has come, how much more so concerning the idea of will. That will is for sure not embedded and invested in a particular specific limb or organ, and definitely not in a way that's united with the organs. So therefore, we can understand concerning the level of the neshama that's called chaya. It's the level of chachma. How do we see that chaya has to do with chachma? That a chachma is the level of giving chaya. So chaya has to do with chachma. This means the level of chachma that's chaya is not the level of chachma that comes down, not the level of intellect the way it comes down in understanding and a comprehension and a grasp, which is mainly bina. It's only a point. Such a degree to way the Alter Rebbe writes in time in the name of his teacher, the Zikr Magid, top of page as well. Chachma is the perception and the awareness that all there is only Hashem alone, and there's nothing besides. That's the awareness and the appreciation of Chachma. There is no separate entity like there is in the other spheres. Chachma totally identifies with Hashem. It's a level of bit. So this is all chaya. Now chaya is not enclosed. How much more so when it comes to the level of yechida? It is totally transcendent and is not involved in a particular limb and organ. And it's completely a level of bittul to elikus. It goes on in line 5. More specifically, that this bittul of chachma, the level of chayit, that it's the idea, the appreciation, and relating to the fact that Hashem is the only thing there is, and there's nothing besides it. Areze beoifen sheyesh tzorech lishlol kasal kedaitach svara achetz. This is in such a manner that one still needs to negate another type of view that would say that there is some other thing. In other words, Chachma is not yet that total bittul that even the idea that there's something other than Hashem doesn't exist. The bittul of Chachma is such that it comprehends or it relates to the fact that there's nothing besides Hashem, but it needs to demonstrate the fact, it needs to express that fact, because there's a possibility for someone to say otherwise. And this is also the same idea about how Chachma approaches to refine and change things. It's concerning the general idea of the refinement takes place through Chachma. Like this statement says, that with Chachma, things become refined. Chachma is a means through refining. After Chachma though Chachma affects the idea of refinement, so that itself indicates Chachma does the refining, but there's something that needs to be refined. So he says, there's an existence that one needs to refine it. Only from the level of Chachma that its idea is bittul. So then there's the true and complete and total refinement. But there's still a need to affect the birur or to nullify the yesh. So in other words, on the one hand, it's bittul. On the other hand, it is relating and dealing with things that are contrary to bittul that Chachma needs to do away and say, no, don't follow that type of approach. This itself, it's obvious and proven. This must be a level that has some type of association to the existence of the yesh and to the thing that becomes refined. How about you're saying it relates to the yesh, but on the other hand, the chachma has a component of ayin. That's why we say a chachma ma'ayin timotzei. Chachma comes out from the level of ayin. So how could it be that's relating to yesh, and you're saying a chachma ma'ayin timotzei? So it says, it's not the true ayin that precedes the yesh. Rather, it's the ayin that comes to nullify and to sublimate and to show the yesh that it has to be bottled. So now the Rebbe is going to explain the difference between the ayin that preceded the yesh to the ayin that comes down to be mevatel the yesh. Top of page Tazayin. So he says, line 2, line 1, like it's known the difference between the two ideas in the ayin. The ayin that's coming to nullify the yesh. That means it's following the yesh. It means the yesh preceded this ayin, and now the ayin has to come and deal with the yesh's issues. It's not just that the yesh is just preceding it in the way of a cause and effect. When you say that the yesh precedes the ayin, and now the ayin has to come and convince the yesh and show the yesh how it's really bottled. So the fact that the yesh came first over here, this is actually an indication that the yesh is higher in level. That yesh in its root is higher than the root of the ayin that nullifies the yesh. To such a degree that the ayin, the way it's on its own, yesh has some type of association with the yesh. Like we mentioned before, the very fact that one needs to affect and nullify the yesh, That means that the yesh is of consequence over here. It must be that there is some connection and some relationship between the ayin and the yesh. And the proof for it is there's a need for the idea of avoidam. Avoid is haberudim. We need to have the avoid of refining the sparks. But chachma is bedir with chachma. It'll be refined by avoid shalis bonus, or in a way of an avoid of meditating on realization of what the yesh is truly not a mitzvah for itself. That's the idea of chachma. That level of his bonus, ba'ifin shalakara. There's the level of these bonus where he comes to recognize something higher than the bina. Like you say to him as a ria the chachma, or even a higher level where these bonus leads him to chachma actually perceiving it and seeing it. So this is still, all of this level of chachma still shows that it relates to the idea of the yesh. So it's not completely divorced and removed from the yesh, and that's why the yesh is higher in its source than the ayin and so on. Yes, there is a more elevated level. That's the level of Yechida. Concerning Yechida, it says, Havuka udvuka bach, embracing and cleaving in you. Yechida liyachtach. The Yachid is the Yechida is to become one and joined with you. There's nothing over here that needs to be nullified. It is initially embraced and cleaving to you, and its entire existence is only to be united with you. Therefore, the bitl of Yechida, that's even a deeper and truer bitl than the bitl of the level of Chach. Line 21. Since these two levels, I feel high. Even Chaya, and how much more so Yechid? It's not in such a way that's enclosed in a specific limb or organ, not like the neshama and the brain and so on. Movement again, this is also understood concerning the person's avodah. The main avodah is not chayechida, because the avodah is what its connection is with the body. These things transcend the body. These are not joined with the body. Nefesh, ruach, neshama. Rather, the main avodah is in these three levels. Avodah that's based on reason and understanding. That's in the capability of every single yid. And every yid was commanded to do the avodas having to do with nefesh, ruach, neshama. Though the foundation and the root of avoid is self-sacrifice, that's a result of the essential will and a pure the will that's impossible to do so differently. Like the teaching of the Alter Rebbe. Yid does not want and cannot be separated from godliness. This idea of self-sacrifice, which comes from the Chai Yechid of the Nefesh, that he cannot separate himself from Hashem, that has no particular limb and organ, that's only the foundation and the root of the Avodah. But the day-to-day Avodah that he is supposed to do, Avodah Begoli, the revealed Avodah, Avodah Shalpitam V'das, Avodah according to reason and knowledge. It's the Avodah the Nefesh Ruach Neshama. It's the Avodah of the levels of Nefesh Ruach Neshama. This is the main Avodah of the. Any questions?